I know I said I was going to introduce another very cool feature, which is vModel, and I'm going to introduce that one very soon. But before we see that, we have to see another feature, which is going to be bindings. Let's go ahead and see how that works. What we're going to do is upgrade this list, and we're going to, instead of rendering even numbers, we're going to render them all. So I'm going to change this one back to numbers. And now we can see we're now rendering the full list. What we're going to do now is render different colors depending on the value. So for odd numbers, we're going to make them, let's say, red, and for even numbers, we're going to make them blue. Let's see how we might go about doing that. What I'm going to do is create a function that's going to decide the color to render, and then we're going to apply that using a class binding. The first thing I'm going to do is add some extra styling though. So I'm going to head over to my index.html file. Let's go ahead and add some very basic styles. I'm going to have a red style, which is just going to apply color of red, and it's not very exciting. And we're going to have exactly the same thing. Blue is going to apply a color of blue. Now that we have that, what we'd like to do is try and add a different class here, depending on whether the number is even or odd. So let's try it out. What we're going to do is obviously apply a class, and we're going to attempt to bind this using a JavaScript function. I'm going to say getClass, and we're going to pass in the number. And depending on the result of this function, we're going to change the class binding. Let's go ahead and write that method now. So it's going to be called getClass. It's going to take a number, and we're going to see if it's odd or even, and then return the correct class. So I could just do something like if this dot is even, and pass in my number. And if it is even, I'm just going to return, let's just say red. And if it's not even, it must be odd, so I'm just going to say return blue. And if we were to save this off now, it's not going to do anything. If we head over to the browser and we look at the DOM, we can see it's actually using a string literal here, which is not going to do what we want. What we really want to do here is evaluate this JavaScript, get the result, and then apply it to the class. And the way we can do that is by using the vBinding. So I'm going to say vbind :class. And what this is going to do is tell it this is not going to have a string literal, it's going to have a JavaScript expression which I'm going to evaluate, and then the result is going to be applied to the class. Let's go ahead and try this out. If I save this one off, head back to the browser and refresh it, we can see the odd numbers are now blue and the even numbers are now red. And what it's done is actually evaluated that function, returned the result, and applied it to the class. So this is very cool. This is not just limited to classes, you can use it for any valid HTML attribute. For example, I could create a title and bind the number, and what this is going to do is dynamically apply the number to the title attribute. And if we head back to the browser, we can see this is working. If I hover over 4, it's going to show 4. And this is a really useful feature, and we're going to see it a whole lot more as we go. One other thing I'd like to show you is a shorthand, and instead of typing vbind, which is kind of long, you just can use the colon, and what this is going to do is be a shorthand for vbind. And this is going to work exactly the same, and that's what I've done over here with title. And if we refresh it, it's going to work exactly the same. Since we're making things concise, I'm going to show you one other concise refactor we can make. Instead of typing v on every single time, we can just use the @ mark, and this is going to be the shorthand for v on. And if we save this off, head back to the browser, we can see everything is still working as expected. This is quite a lot to absorb, but we're going to see this over and over again as we go, so don't worry if you didn't fully understand everything. You can definitely go around and have a play around with this, but we're going to see this more often for all kinds of different values such as style and value. So we're going to use that knowledge in the next tutorial when we look at vModel.